U.S. for a bit. Just generally, what do you make of Donald Trump's victory, and what are the factors that led the country to this unexpected result?
There are several things you can do in punditry, by the way. One of them is to always claim that you predicted and saw everything, and I'm not going to play that game.
Cool.
I didn't expect Mr. Trump to achieve the presidency. I didn't think he'd get the nomination. I mean, I thought it was going to stop way before the Republican convention. And I remember exactly where I was sitting in the US, staying with some friends when the New York Post came out because Mr. Trump had insulted John McCain.
Yeah,
do you remember that? And
yeah.
I remember saying, that's it. That's it. Bye-bye, Mr. Trump. That's the end of him. So as I say, I'm not going to. After last year, I refused to make any more political predictions, pretty much. But no, I didn't see it happening. I think it's obviously an enormous middle finger, significant amount of the public to the establishment, and sometimes that's necessary. I don't think, by the way, the endless gloom about him is warranted any more than the excessive admiration. This is very early in the presidency, and I don't think it's fair to make too many assessments at this stage. And I also, by the way, I just abhor it in American politics in general these days. Any time, I mean, I remember with the Obama first term, sort of a couple of weeks in, people saying, maybe this president's going to be impeached. And you think, really, just give him more than a few weeks.
Okay. To tread on Donald Trump just a little bit more, during the campaign trail, he was very vocal about Hillary Clinton not being able to say the words radical Islamic terrorism. Why are political leaders so reluctant to use these two words together? And what's the extent of their connection, I guess?
They're reluctant for I think, an understandable reason. I mean, words do matter in politics, and the signs you give off matter. There are good reasons to worry that the general public might think you're saying something you're not, and that was a worry in the Bush years. It was a worry in the Obama years. I think the Obama years, they went very, very much too far in that. And it's also the case, by the way, that in opposition, political parties and political movements can often become very lazy. And I think there was a certain laziness in the Republican camp during the Obama years on this. A lot of the work that could have been done in this area was not done. And instead we had the talking points about it. And the chief talking point on the Republican side about this was, the president won't even use these words. My view was always, well, he should use the words, but that's not going to solve it. That's not going to address the issue. That's a start. That's where you'd be starting from.
How should the issue be addressed, do you think?
Well, my view is that from a much broader understanding than that of it, it's an exceptionally complex subject. It's because you are treading not only on domestic, on foreign, but domestic issues. My own view is that the involvement of the American state in this is already pretty much fine on the most visceral counter-terror bit of it. The Obama administration's counter-terrorism, the FBI's, the domestic counter-terrorism stuff is pretty good. They stop major attacks and so on. It's the level beneath that they would ordinarily be needing to occupy themselves with. So who is it that is training the police force in their religion awareness days? Who is it that's teaching, as it were, law enforcement and so on, the broader picture of it? And I think if you look at that story, that is quite worrying. You really don't want some of the groups who've been moving into that area. But as I say, this is the level below the criminal. The Obama administration wasn't allowing anyone to fly planes into towers either. But in my view, as I say, it's the level beneath that. It's the level beneath the criminal. It's the societal self-education level that's the bit that's most wanting, actually. And as I say, I just am very struck that a lot of Republican critics of Obama years failed to involve themselves in the detail they should have done during that time.
So Douglas, they're telling us about his prognostication skills, or maybe lack thereof, as it appears in terms of Donald Trump. So it seems that Douglas Murray was not a big, or at least didn't think that Donald Trump could win. Douglas, I got to tell you, At that time, I was doing some Facebook postings, and I have been a huge, absolutely huge Trump supporter even before he ran. I liked the man. I liked what he stood for. I liked his spirit. I liked his America first. I mean, he was always talking about America and how great it was. And when he decided to run, coming down that escalator, I knew he was going to win. I knew he was going to win. And I talked about it on Facebook. I talked about it with friends and colleagues. They thought I was nuts. I live in a very liberal area, community and whatever. And I was the one that was out there all the time talking about Trump and how he was going to win and why he was going to win. And so I think Douglas, she certainly did not read the tea leaves. And there weren't many in the camp. You probably listened five in my hand here. Listen of people that prognosticators that said that Donald Trump and put it out there literally going against the grain. And when he won in 2016 on November 8th, oh my goodness, did that feel so good? I remember being at home. I had two laptops on. I was looking at the different results coming in from different counties, looking at the results, what was happening in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Ohio comes in, Florida comes in. I mean, it was just absolutely great. So I'll just leave it at that. At Douglas, I got you on that one there. Now, when Douglas there is talking about like the Obama monarchy, that's my terminology, the Obama monarchy, and even going back to some of the Bush administration, we were saying that in terms of talking about radical fundamentalists within the religion of Islam, and this is something that was hitting dear to my heart too, is because we weren't calling out Islamists as Islamists during that point of view. I don't know where it's coined. I have to go back and take a look at it, but I've written articles before talking about the differences between being an Islamist, a Muslimist, and Islam. And there's huge differences in that. But the thing that was happening during the Obama monarchy is that they weren't, and the same thing was Clinton was doing the same thing. We're not going to call it, what was it, a terrorist incident occurs, man made disaster. Man made disaster. What the hell is that? I mean, because we didn't want to piss off or anger the Islamists. We didn't want to anger or piss off, Muslims or whatever. If you do it in the right way and you say it with conviction and you tell that, look, there's a separation, we're going to separate out the 99.99% of Muslims that go about their business and don't do a single, all they want to do is live either in the Muslim countries or they want to live in other countries and they just want to follow the law, obey everything, work, make money, make sure they're safe, their kids are safe, kids get a good education, kids get grown up, kids get married, kids have kids, they've got grandkids, and hopefully the legacy is set and forward in either their Muslim. That's all they want. But you do have obviously that small minority who claim to be Muslims, who claim to be, in the name of Islam. And those are the people that are the perpetrators. Those are the terrorists. Those are the fundamentalists. Those are the Islamists. Those are the Muslimists. And that needs to be called out, but not by making up these stupid ass names and calling them man-made disasters or whatever the heck else the terminology was, but the linguistic lingo that was being brought forth during the Obama monarchy and was being practiced and preached also by Hillary and her Clintonites. That's what people they read through that BS. They know what you're doing, and people get upset about this. They said, "Why don't you call a spade a freaking spade?" That's what you need to do. Anyways, that's what we have on tap for you today. We got more Douglas Murray answering some questions. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir, where I give you my political prescription from my political perspective of what happens when all these things collide. Douglas Murray, Donald Trump, social media, culture, politics, religion, they all come coming together. Let's get back to Douglas Murray and his interview.
Israel's expansion of settlements into Palestinian territory has been criticized by many, even ruled illegal, shall we say, by the International Court of Justice. Do you think Israel is overstepping its bounds in doing so, or is this legitimate?
Well, yeah, since the UN resolution in December, of course, the legal standing of this is being seen to toughen. My own view is that I'm not in favour of expansion of settlements. They're called. I think that you have to realize which ones are actually expansion of territory and which ones are on areas which, in any final status agreement, are obviously on the Israeli side of the land swaps. That detail is not often covered, by the way, in the press here. My own view is that it's not it's an issue, but it's not the only issue. I think my own view is that there are many other issues before you get to that one that are holding up the peace process. And by the way, the one that's most problematic is the question of the right to return, which now extends to millions of people. Any other conflict that wouldn't be permitted. But my own view is that is one of, if not the biggest, stalling point. But look, I mean, it's a conflict, a land dispute, which may well go on for the rest of our lives. It may well go on for many more generations. There are unsolved conflicts around the world, unsolvable conflicts, arguably. I think that there are things that both sides can do in the Israeli-Palestinian dispute to get towards a peace deal that they're not doing. But, there are a lot of things that the Turkish government is not doing to alleviate the problem in Cyprus. And we don't spend 1% of the time that we spend on this issue. My view, by the way, very quickly, you didn't ask this, but my view is that that's because we have a false idea. Nobody believes that, for instance, the Eurozone crises would be solved if you could unite Cyprus. Okay? Nobody believes that every problem of the EU would go away if you could just solve the Cyprus problem. But there has been for a long time a view that you could solve all problems in the Middle East if you solved the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. It was one of David Miliband's things when he was foreign secretary. It's a Labour thing, it's a Conservative thing, everybody makes the argument. And I think that's just fundamentally not the case. And that, amazingly enough, if they did come to an agreement, which I wish they would, but I don't think that if they would, the economy of Yemen would boom and that the Saudis would suddenly understand the point of women's rights and so on. So it's important, but I think there's an overstating of its importance.
Fair enough. Okay, well, Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time.
Interesting point there by Douglas Murray, talking about the Israeli situation and the question of, land, grabs by Israel, or is it just settlements that are occurring? Are these undisputed territories, or they are the disputed territories? All that needs to be, taken into consideration. And like Douglas said, that's, if you're just talking about that, is that the real thing that's limiting or, preventing the peace process from moving forward? It's not even close, folks. Is it a hindrance? Can everybody bring up that, this stickiness, that thorn in the side, and say, as basically, oh, that's it. It's the land settlements. That's why there's no peace. Come on, we all know that's not true. We all know that's not true. But then getting to the fact in terms of what do we do about, Hamas? What do we do about the Palestinian Authority? Who is really, at this point in time, it's Hamas that's in charge. But are they doing anything to commit to the peace process? No, absolutely not. It's still in their charter. They wanted the destruction of Israel. So nothing is going to go, further in terms of this point. When he brings the analogy of the Cyprus situation with Turkey, that if that thing was just solved, is the EU problem all of a sudden now we're living in heaven, paradise, kumbaya for the entire European Union? And I'm telling you what, folks, you could have a magic wand right now. I could have a magic wand and make the wish and go, Middle East problem solved. And even if you just said, for example, that you found an absolutely exact piece of land and you gave that to Israel, and let's say you allowed the Palestinians and I'm just saying this just as as a thought. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea here. But my premise is this: if you could give everything back to the Palestinians, they had their own country, and there was a space for Israel to be put as well. I want to make this very clear that if you solve the problem somehow, and every, if Hamas could be persuaded somehow that this is done to your liking, and I don't mean obviously not to the fact of in their charter, the eradication or the destruction of state of Israel. No, no, no. Forget that. I'm not talking about that part. I'm just saying that you could have Israelis and Palestinians living, and you gave everything to the Palestinians that they wanted. The problem, forget that. That's not going to solve the Middle East problem. It's not going to solve the world problem with Islamists and Muslimists and terrorists. They're still going to want more. They're still going to want to, what? The caliphate. They're still going to want to do everything that they're talking about now. You think that's going to, Boko Haram, and you think the African situation with Boko Haram and the Islamist groups there, the Islamist groups in Russia, in Chechnya, in other places of the world, you don't think that's not going to continue? You don't think there's going to be problems? You're not going to bring a kumbaya moment. Everybody hugging each other, kissing each other, celebratory dances, that the problem has been solved, as Inspector Jacques Lucel of the French Sûreté used to say, I have come and the crime is solved. I mean, come on, nothing's going to be solved. There's always going to be issues. And as Douglas was saying there, this may not even be solved in our generational lifetime. This may just continue to fester and go on and on and on into the next century or centuries. Who knows? Hopefully not. But right now, if you were looking at it from a futuristic standpoint and betting, nothing close to being accomplished. Now, getting back to something about Trump, what he did with the Abraham Accords, with the UAE, Dubai, and Qatar, and get them on board with at least starting the process, the peace process, and starting that process between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And that's why Iran did not want that to succeed. And that was this whole thing, the premise for the October 7th terrorist incident, that occurred. And it did. It, severed that entire thing going. And Biden administration certainly, I know I'm carrying on right now, but the Biden administration certainly did not want to give Trump the credit and did everything in their power to try to prevent the Israel-Riyadh relationship from extending. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. You all know what to do. Take a look at our videos here and below. Comment. Love for you to share your comments. What do you think? My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. When you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.